To the defenders of South Ossetia, 1989, 2008, I found these gunfire remains which seem to be shrapnel shots. A giant screen shows images from the 90s and 2008 wars with Ossetia and Russia's flags together. Look, how curious what I was telling you about Stalin. With the Z. I just ran into the official representation of Transnistria. How's life here? Normal, very good, alright, very good. Good morning from Vladikavkaz, the capital of the Republic of Alania Ossetia, here in the Russian Caucasus. Today I'm heading to Tskhinval, the capital of South Ossetia, one of those territories not recognized by most of the international community, and it promises to be interesting. Shall we go? Hybrid warfare tactics were already described and used in earlier centuries. It was at the beginning of this century when the American military analyst Frank G. Hoffman and other authors began to popularize the term. These types of conflicts are characterized, among other things, by mixing conventional warfare tactics with unconventional strategies, such as information warfare. The use of social networks, cyber attacks, terrorism, insurgency, or separatism, these new generation warfare practices are also called the Gerasimov Doctrine, as mentioned by the head of state. In a 2013 speech, a Russian armed forces major analyzed recent United States actions against Russia. During the 2008 South Ossetia war, conventional attacks were used along with ground troops and airstrikes, along with cyber attacks targeting Georgian government and media infrastructure. These events are seen as an early example of hybrid warfare and the start of cyber attacks in modern conflicts. Having visited Abkhazia a few years ago, this time we'll go to South Ossetia, a related conflict with its own unique circumstances. Here is the marshrutka that will take me to Tskhinval. I already have the ticket, 500 rubles and about 4 hours of travel. It depends on how long it takes to cross the border. We're already going up. You can tell we're climbing the mountain. Along the road that connects Russia and South Ossetia, a key road that is of great commercial and strategic importance. Here, next to the road. I don't know if you can see it with this camera, but you can see the power line that connects Russia with South Ossetia, and that's because the electricity supply has to come from Russia. Before, in Soviet times, it was connected with the Republic of Georgia. After the conflict, all of that ended. A huge high-voltage power line that supplies electricity to the territory of South Ossetia and crosses all these mountains. We're already passing through tunnels, and soon we'll cross the one that definitively connects Russia with South Ossetia. Another tunnel that played a very important role in the conflict and that the militias and Russian troops managed to control in the initial hours of the conflict. After the 1991 clashes between the Georgian army and Ossetian militias, South Ossetia's economy became increasingly dependent on Russia and less on Georgia. This dependence grew after 2008. South Ossetia's economy now relies heavily on Russian financial aid for investment projects. As well as gas and electricity, many of its inhabitants still maintain a subsistence economy, and there are high hopes placed on expanding tourism capacities to attract Russian tourists. Control of the Roksky Tunnel and its customs duties helps South Ossetia's economy, though the exact amount is unknown. Built in the mid-80s by the Soviets, this tunnel was then the largest car tunnel in the Soviet Union, with almost 4 kilometers. It links Russia to South Ossetia, and before 2008 was the quickest route from Russia to Turkey and Iran, through Tskhinval and Gori. Well, that's it. I've arrived in Tskhinval, the capital of South Ossetia. It's a rainy day. Today is going to be a video soaked in water. It took me about 4.5 hours in total, and well, along the winding road through the mountains. I'm not surprised that the Alans ended up in Spain. You know, those tribes that were called barbarians, as the Romans used to say. We spent quite a while at the border. First, because they wouldn't open the gate for the driver, and the guy got mad, honking there, I don't know. It was quite a peculiar sight. I've never seen a bus driver rushing the police before. Then besides that, they were also asking me some questions because, well, not many tourists come here. The driver scolded me and said, "Come on," and the police officer also asked why I was kept there so long. I don't know why, but he was angry and said he'd lose his job. And now, just arrived, I'm heading to the park, to Central Park, as he told me. The driver says, "Nothing to see here. Why are you here? It's raining. What will you see?" A guy in a bad mood, but funny. And look. What the license plates of South Ossetia are like, the Republic of South Ossetia, there you have them with the white, red and yellow flag. Although you also see a lot of Russian car license plates because Russian influence is very noticeable, especially since 2008. Look at what we can find here on the streets of Trimble, a grapevine with grapes that are almost ready. These must be almost ready to be picked. In a couple of weeks or so, a month at most, they'll be harvesting them and making wine. This is also a region that's, well, not famous for its wines, like some others might be. I don't know, like La Rioja or Ribera del Duero, but it is a wine-producing region. My first impressions are that it's a pretty well-kept, clean city. Obviously, it's not a booming economic center because it's very small. This Republic of South Ossetia has only about 50,000 inhabitants. A little more, but that's what I was going to say. The impression is that it's clean, it's orderly, and that's it. I'm walking down Pushkin Street and I've come across these marks, not from gunfire, though they look like bullet holes, shrapnel here on this wall, but so far these are the first ones I've seen. So everything is pretty well rebuilt. Ossetians descend from the Alans, Iranian nomads who moved to the Caucasus after the Roman Empire fell and the Huns invaded in the 4th century. Some of these Alans settled and mixed with the other Caucasian peoples of the area, and as they became established, they were called Os and Assi by other peoples, to refer to the descendants of the Alans. When the Russian Empire expanded into the area in the 18th and 19th centuries, Russian administrators called them Ossetians, thus consolidating their modern ethnic identity. Another group of Alans joined barbarian tribes crossing the Pyrenees into present-day Spain in the 5th century. Though later assimilated by other Germanic tribes, their genetic and cultural impact likely persisted among Iberian Peninsula inhabitants. Due to mixed marriages, several historians attribute the breeding of the Spanish Elano, which was used for herding and war, to the passage of the Alans through the peninsula. And later, it played a fundamental role in Golden Age Spain, as well as in the conquest of America, and support for the tercios, hunting and bullfighting. Hey, I'm gonna try something with my Russian MIR card, the MIR payment system. I'm gonna see if I can withdraw money. Here in South Ossetia, some rubles, Russian rubles. Which are the ones used here? Let's see. 2,000 rubles, roughly 20 euros. Zero commission. Seriously, look, there it is. It says 0 commissions. We'll see later if the Russian bank charges me, but for now, nothing here. There are my Russian rubles. Yeah, withdrawing money in Ossetia done. I didn't expect to withdraw money without commissions so easily. Here I knew they accepted the MIR card. Of course, if you come with a Visa or MasterCard, they won't accept it, but the Russian MIR card, yes. Look, and here, wandering the streets again, there's a grapevine with grapes. This is how the side streets near the center look in South Ossetia, in Trimble. Look, what a little shop, already closed. They've put a padlock on it. Here it says piraguinas here, which are like empanadas made to order. Well, pierogies are the typical food here. In fact, there are some pierogies called Cetinski that have that name precisely because they're from here. You see a lot of small businesses, like shops selling products, for example, like this one here and here. We have a plaque in honor of someone, but it's written in Ossetian and I don't understand anything. From what I see in the initials, it must be some member of the Committee of the Socialist Republic of Georgia from when it was the Soviet Union. Well, and walking through the streets here in the capital of Trimble, I just came across a party. I'm saying this because there are so many Russian flags, so many South Ossetian flags, and it turns out that today, August 26th, I'm visiting South Ossetia, the day when Russia officially recognized this territory's independence internationally on August 26, 2008. I even saw the president. There was a small market, many kids, lots of police and television too. Here, behind me, is the memorial to the soldiers who fell in the war. I'm not sure if it's the one from 91 or 2008, but here it is. You can see next to this beautiful church with a totally Georgian style, which you can see in Georgia. And I would even say that in Armenia you can also see some buildings similar to this type. And do you see what looks like an angel with a cross on his chest and a sword? In 1991, Ossetia began to claim its status as a republic, and later claimed its independence from Georgia. And a conflict began that is estimated to have taken the lives of about 1,000 people. From then until 2008, which was the next conflict, there was a tense calm during which Russia began to gain influence. Without having recognized the republic internationally, but by giving passports to Ossetian citizens. Well, and gaining significant economic influence. A joint Georgian and Russian peacekeeping force was also established, which more or less maintained, as I said, the tense calm in the territory. That conflict ended with the signing of the peace agreements by Shevardnadze, who was a former minister of Gorbachev in the Soviet Union, a Georgian minister not of Georgian origin. Shevardnadze was the president of Georgia until he won the elections a few years later. Saakashvili, a president who was, I don't know if I should say antagonistic or opposed to what Shevardnadze represented, not the Soviet Union, the rapprochement with Russia and Saakashvili. He had studied in the United States and had a policy that was closer precisely to the United States and the West. In fact, among many of the policies he carried out, perhaps the ones most related to this conflict with this territory were the request to join NATO and the intention to recover the territories that declared themselves independent. Abkhazia and South Ossetia in 2008. In August 2008, the conflict would begin, which would last only a few days. Georgian troops said they aimed to pacify the area and conduct an anti-terrorist, not police, operation to disarm local militias, to which Russia responded forcefully, and a few days later, as I said, peace was signed, and Russia ended up recognizing South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent. Later, countries like Venezuela, Syria, Nauru, and Nicaragua would join in. For Georgians, South Ossetia is called Tzimbali, or Samakhlabo, named after a Georgian aristocratic family present from the 15th century until the Russian Empire's arrival in the 19th century. They see it as part of their country, though it's actually independent from Georgia. There are tensions between Ossetians and Georgians since the Middle Ages, during the Kingdom of Georgia's Golden Age. It served as a beacon of Christian Orient, though they also allied and intermarried with the Orthodox Christian islands. Differences began to emerge with the arrival of the Russian Empire. While they stayed calm during the Soviet Union, by its end, hostility between the groups became unsustainable. I just came across a bust of Ivan Georgievich Gavarev. It says he was the first Ossetian writer and diplomat. Let's see what's inside the church. next to the church. I just ran into the official representative from Transnistria, another unrecognized territory, and as you can see, they tend to recognize each other. It's very typical to see. That's what happens with Transnistria, Nagorno-Karabakh, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia, and here is Transnistria's diplomatic representation. Something, of course, unique and not often seen. Look, what an old little house in this hallway here, made of baked brick. Beautiful. The landscape here is beautiful. If it weren't raining, you could see the mountains. Over there is Russia and the Caucasus mountain range, and there, 2 kilometers away, is Georgia. Symbol, the capital of South Ossetia, is practically on the border of this territory with Georgia. Behind those mountains, we already have the Caucasian country. A land of law. How curious, this sign. You often see this in other countries and Russia. The photos and details of the wanted criminals. Some posters, like the ones about narcotics, are a warning for the future. Drugs. Come on, live free. Without narcotics, without drugs, and no more syringes. Over there. It warns about drunk drivers and shows pictures of wrecked cars, car accidents. Another building with bullet holes I just came across while walking, but if you look closely it's half covered up, right? You can see the bullet holes up there, some shrapnel remains, although obviously this building is abandoned. And on the lower part, it looks like they've tried to cover them with plaster and paint. Honestly, I haven't found many, we have to be honest. There are several abandoned buildings, many others under construction, and you can also see that these are buildings made by the people themselves. Since there's a lack of all kinds of industry, brick by brick, little by little, things are being rebuilt. But yes, that's good. I say this because, unlike Abkhazia, in Abkhazia there were areas that looked very, very shot up and very abandoned, also because Abkhazia is bigger, there's more population, and now I've just arrived. This is definitely the monument to military glory, to the heroes, it says there, to the defenders of South Ossetia, 1989-2008. There you have them both in 2008, as well as the soldiers, when the Soviet Union had just fallen, and later in 2008. And you have all these roses, they're fresh, you know? They just left them, they probably left them here. This morning, with the commemoration of the international recognition of Russia towards South Ossetia. I imagine that the delegation with the president and other dignitaries came in the morning to lay the floral offering. The 2008 war is known as a brief but intense war. On August 7th, Georgia launched a massive military offensive trying to retake Chigimbal from the militias, justifying the action as retaliation for earlier separatist attacks on Georgian villages. By August 8, Russia had condemned the attack, seized the Roksky tunnel, and heavily bombed Chigimbal, citing the defense of its citizens, as many Ossetians held Russian passports. On the third day, Abkhazia opened a second front, expelling the Georgian troops from the region. The Russian forces expelled the Georgians from Chigimbal, and Russia expanded its offensive into the interior of Georgia, including Stalin's hometown, Gori, and other military targets. On August 12th, Russia declared a ceasefire after mediation by French President Nicolas Sarkozy for the European Union. According to Human Rights Watch, the war would result in 800 deaths and about 20,000 permanently displaced. On August 26, 2008, just days after the conflict ended, Russia officially recognized South Ossetia and Abkhazia's independence. Notice this detail. This soldier is shown in the memorial with a sniper rifle. I can't recall if it was the first, second, or third day. It's known as the Day of the Snipers, or the Sniper War, the Battle of the Snipers. Rather, because shots started being fired, both by the Georgian side and by the militias towards the border posts. That's when hostilities began to escalate, and later the Russian peacekeeping troops would enter. You can see here fallen soldiers being helped by others in combat position, destroyed tanks, buildings also riddled with bullets, and the silhouette of the Caucasus Mountains. This is a very mountainous territory, although Chigimbal is located in a valley. And finally, above are two doves of peace and what seems to be, though colorless, the flags of South Ossetia and Russia. The glorious heroes will be in the people's memory forever. And there you have, in the other inscription, you have the Ossetian language, so you can see the difference. They use the Cyrillic alphabet, but look here how it says that it's for the defenders of South Ossetia. As I mentioned before, in Ossetian, it would be something like this, like... I can't read the rest, sorry. Oh wow, it's an old Indo-European language. It smelled amazing, but I won't eat a whole cake since it would just go to waste. If I get the chance later, I'll show you this. It's peraskia, satinsky. They're delicious. Look, another thing you can find on the streets are posters of the heroes, eternal memory to the heroes. It says there, underneath. And now, heading back to the station, wetter than a dog in the street, Putin. It's very typical in the Caucasus. It's not the first time I've seen them name a street after Putin. I've already seen it in Chechnya and Ingushetia, and here in South Ossetia there's one too. Of course, he was the president who recognized South Ossetia internationally as an independent territory. And also, if you walk through the streets of South Ossetia, in Tskhinvali to be precise, you'll find Stalin Street. Stalin was Georgian, as many of you may know, and he is highly regarded here. The Ossetians hold him in high esteem. The same thing happens when you cross the mountain range into North Ossetia, where we started the video today. There you will also see busts, statues, and people have his photo at food stalls, in the market, in the shops. It's something you hardly see in the rest of Russia. Look, take a look at what you can find while walking through the streets. At the university here in Chimbali, from South Ossetia you have a giant screen with images from the wars of the 90s and 2008. Interviewing fighters alongside Ossetia and Russia flags. Naturally, there's also the Z and V with St. George's ribbon, signaling support for the special military operation. Look at what I was telling you, and next to the university you have this school, school number 3, completely renovated. And on that sign it says, what proves the Russian aid here to this territory, it says Object o Will. Building constructed with the financial help of the Russian Federation in 2020-2021, and with a plaque next to it that says this same school, during the Patriotic War, the Great Patriotic War from 1942 to 1943, served as a field hospital. Beautiful mosaic that I just found here with images of Ossetian culture. You can see the livestock, music, typical mountain women, clothing, and later, mining in the Soviet industry. Literature, poems, writers. And this must be Mother Nature. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think it's one of the deities they have around here. It appears throughout the Caucasus Mountains. These are communities that traditionally, historically have believed a lot in nature spirits. Until later, when they accepted monotheistic religions. In the case of Ossetia, they accepted Christianity with the Byzantine missionaries who arrived here around the 12th and 13th centuries. Look what I just found. Also, precisely, a memorial to the soldiers and officers of the peacekeeping forces who defended the people and the independence of South Ossetia with their lives. With the inscription MS, which is what these peacekeeping troops had on their helmets, and the eternal flame. Down there and here, this mural says, "Thank you for your work," to the doctors. I imagine it's because of COVID, not because of the pandemic with the mask. And these are the territories of North Ossetia and South Ossetia, if I'm not mistaken, and it says down there, United Alania. In 2017, a referendum approved changing the name of South Ossetia to also add Alania, just like North Ossetia has. And in this way, they remember the times of the Alanian Empire, which lasted from the 8th or 9th century until the 11th or 12th century, until the Mongols arrived and practically wiped them off the map. Just as I'm about to take the bus, someone is calling me to take me to Vladikavkaz, but well, that's in case I missed the bus. What I wanted to say is that we're at the central square, not where the tour started. Over here, there's the Avtovokzal bus station. This square, or this street, is dedicated to the peacekeeping forces, and here, behind me, you have exactly that. A small mural, a little mural dedicated to the peacekeeping forces with the Russian flag and South Ossetia of a soldier with the inscription MS 26-08-2008 when Russia internationally recognized the independence of South Ossetia. Currently, relations between Russia and Georgia are maintained on the basis of pragmatism, although they remain tense and highly politicized. Both sides are seeking rapprochement and trying to find a solution that benefits all, avoiding escalation. Although there are groups in South Ossetia that advocate for unification with North Ossetia, which would mean joining the Russian Federation, Russia has not taken that step. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the majority of the population seeks to join the European Union. However, they recently passed the so-called Foreign Agents Law, contradicting this desire, as it is considered by the leaders in Brussels to be a move closer to Moscow. The commercial and economic ties between both countries are important in areas such as gas, tourism, wine, and mineral water. Despite the political hostility, trade has increased in recent years, and it seems to be the common point of geopolitical understanding in this complex issue. Look, how curious what I was telling you about Stalin with the Z. You see a lot of military trucks, these and police and everything. I don't know if it's because there was a holiday today. Well, the thing is, I'm going to have a snack for the trip since I have another 4 hours back to Vladikavkaz ahead of me. He already said I have 5 minutes. The driver was in a good mood. Now, I didn't have time to buy a pirashki, but I got a bottle of water for 30 rubles and 30 kopecks. He said it was expensive. I find it cheaper here. Prices are generally lower than in Russia. A promise is a promise. Already heading back to Vladikavkaz. Here, in a very nice playground, by the way, full of kids, rides, and a fountain, I got myself a pirashki to go. It's not the best presentation. I'm going to be honest with you, because you have to see this with the melted cheese. In this case, they're cheese and green, which they call herb flavored. There are many varieties, including meat, potato, onion, and potato onion types. After all, it's dough, kind of like a stuffed pizza. It might not be the easiest way to describe it, but well, isn't it basically a pizza? So, as is tradition, I'm going to end the video with a toast to your health for you all. See you next time. Take a look at the hotel. 47 floors. The ideologue of the Yuche movement, and what you see here, the soldier with the stick and the other with this weapon. It's a system that was developed, well, as we've been told, to destroy enemy planes.